we all know when something bad has happened to us. The challenge is getting from acknowledge to acceptance. And what happens is people slide down that slope of suffering. And inside that slope of suffering, where you're suddenly shocked that you have this terrible thing that happens and you don't know what to do with it, and then you're frustrated and you're angry and you're scared and you're fearful, and suddenly you learn how to be helpless and not be able to help yourself. And so resilient people move from acknowledge to accept really quickly. And equally powerful, as they face it and lean into it and they then take control of it, they're able to move up that curve by looking for what I call the opportunity.
I create clear thinking and decisive leaders who can amplify their influence. Contact me to find out how I can help you or your organisation. And today our guest is Nathan Andres. How are you doing?
Hey, Judith, how are you?
I'm pretty good. I'm excited to talk to you, Nate. But before we do that, I'm just super curious. So, do you have a favourite genre of music?
Favorite genre of reading? I would tell you that my favorite genre is likely to be nonfiction blanket. I'm not a big fiction person, and then in nonfiction, I like history, and I love biographies, and I also um, I wrote a book that is about self-improvement, so I also like to read about the science of self-improvement.
So, should I deduce then that you like knowing why things happen?
Yeah, I'm a very curious person. I would tell you that as a Gemini, there's a lot of science behind this, that I am very curious and I kind of like to go down those rabbit holes and learn. Learning is one of my top values and one of my top strengths. So I keep coming back to those kind of curiosities, and reading and exploring and taking adventures in my own knowledge and experience is part of how I've kind of lived my own life of well-being and joy.
Yeah, thank you for that. So, and I'm kind of curious in a way. So, tell us before we kick off on the idea of living a real life, what tell us a bit more about you. So, what do you do?
At the moment, I am now kind of doing consulting work. I have been in the corporate private sector for many, many years, probably 25 plus, working for large brands around the world, expanding those brands in Asia Pacific. I kind of earned a reputation for being a growth guy for many companies, both business growth and culture growth as they expanded their footprints. Today, I do HR consulting, and a big part of my practice is really around coaching, and not only of individuals, but also team coaching, and really helping companies and teams within companies and individuals on those teams really move from, survive to thrive. And, that is the big part of what I do today, in addition to talking about some of the anchors and the concepts from my book. So I would say I'm a one-stop shop well-being activist, trying to change workplaces for the better, and also, bringing my flavor of my purpose, which is to build authenticity and resilience in others, to every place I go.
And that is so well, actually. And I love the way that you have described it in a way that keeps the interest and is very specific.
But I think they are interesting. We like to put ourselves right in the middle of controversy and intersectional adversity and try to stir up change, which I think is why we got connected.
Mm.
One might argue that I'm a well-being maverick, to really create the changes in the world that feel uncomfortable for people at first. But, the world has changed a lot, and we need to continue to push the workplace in the future towards a different direction. We're not a manufacturing society anymore. We have people who work in those kinds of workplaces, but the future looks really different, and we need to be thinking about how do we create well-being culture in the workplace of tomorrow.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because would you argue that capitalism works against a well-being culture?
Well, well, let's not go too far down that rabbit hole, but definitely think that the old mentalities. In fact, I was just last night talking about kind of the old patriarchy that is set up to drive this kind of capitalistic belief system that is, anchored heavily in, productivity and kind of second, third industrial revolution idealism, that has, slowly petered out. And as we look at the rise of AI and bio and nanotechnologies and all of the science that's coming to revolutionize this digital age that is now moving towards this advanced space, we need to be thinking about keeping our workplaces more human centric. And so, without considering the welfare of people and the well-being of people who are going to be doing this work and or using and leveraging technology in the future, I think we do ourselves a disservice. So yeah, I want to kind of stay on that surface level for a moment, but I think that we need to be having more thinking and input to what does the future of that look like.
Yeah, like it just makes me think a little bit of back in the day in the UK when you had children climbing chimneys and dying in chimney stacks, and all the arguments against setting up laws to stop child labor and how that was that would mean you'd earn less money. And it just also makes me think about mental health, because on one side you could argue that the awareness of mental health has got better, it's become more accepting, and people can talk about it. But I think in organizations that's only so true if the mental illness has a beginning and an end. But if you got long-term mental health issues, like maybe depression or bipolar or something like that, then the love and support doesn't seem to exist for those individuals. But if you've got, I don't know, you're grief-stricken and you're going to be grief-stricken for 6 months, then that's kind of okay. But if you've got like a chronic illness, it's not okay. It doesn't seem like, and tell me if you're wrong because you're the activist, but it doesn't seem to me like the understanding is right through the whole range of mental health. It only seems to be the ones that most people can relate to.
Yeah, isn't that interesting, Jude? Because we've got a long way to go. And, some of the statistics are quite alarming, particularly as we look at a post-pandemic, post-COVID reality. To your point, we are becoming more comfortable in talking about mental health in the workplace. In fact, there was a study, and I'm forgetting to cite here exactly who is one of the workplace study groups, that 30% of employees miss work directly as a result of mental health challenges. And interestingly enough, 17% of CEOs are missing work because of mental health related issues. Now, if that's not a challenge unto itself, then let's also consider that in the changeover of the human centric workforces. What's interesting to me is the American Psychology Association also cited that 8 out of 10 prospective employees are actually checking out the companies and what they offer for mental health before they even sign up for a job. Why is that? Because according to, here's another statistics, I'm just throwing them out here at you, but the World Health Organization has cited at least $1.3 trillion in lost productivity. So if we're not talking about mental health in the workplace and trying to move that needle from survive to thrive and having ongoing conversations about the entire scope and span of mental health, then that's a blow to competitive advantages. So, private sector, public sector, we all need to be talking about mental health in the workplace, because as humans, we all have mental health, and we need to kind of normalize and destigmatize the conversations that we're having about that full scope and span. So, to me, what's interesting in the last kind of thing I'm going to throw out here is that 80% of employees today believe that the workplace is responsible for mental health and well-being. Now that's interesting, because what it's mean is that people are going to work saying that they're one-stop shop place, first point of interaction for mental health services is at work. Well, then companies need to be rethinking and reshaping how we provide those kinds of environments that can not only be psychologically safe, but also have the resources and the tools for people
Mm.
to be able to kind of move and be free. Because ultimately, if you want to be a competitive company and you want high output and high productivity and high engagement and ultimately well-being and joy in your company and be a preferred employer, then we need to really be thinking about these types of statistics, but also doing something.
Mm. And I think you're right. And I think organisations sometimes feel that people come to them with mental health issues, as opposed to there are a high proportion of organisations that cause the mental health issues through
They go together.
poor leadership. You know, and it's so there's that. So it's almost like and it made me think about what you said earlier when you said that people are checking out mental health benefits and stuff before they join. It's almost like an implicit understanding that work will make you sick, or at least make you sick for longer. Because otherwise you wouldn't look. Because I just don't believe that there's so many people with mental health issues outside of the workplace. You know, I think there are obviously people who have issues outside the workplace, but there's a vast number where the workplace has created those issues, whether it's overwork, toxic employees, bad managers. You know, the numbers for that is high and high and high. But anyway, I'm interested in your book, or at
Yeah.
least the topics in the book where you talk about your real life, get authentic, be resilient, and make it count. And I suspect you're very much like me, who loves an acronym. So I'm pretty sure that real is an acronym. So tell me about
Yeah. Ding, ding, ding. 20 points for you, Jude. Uh,
that.
if this was a game show, you would get all the big bucks. Yeah, so your real life really is grounded in psychology and neuroscience. And what
Mm,
I tried to attempt to do was answer the question that I was asked so many times in my own life, which was, Nate, how do you go through all the hard stuff that you've been through? You've lived through 9/11 and you lived through some of the biggest earthquakes and tsunamis and nuclear disaster and hurricanes and typhoons, and you're kind of the king of disasters, as my
oh my
as my
God.
family
I
like
don't want to
to.
sit too close to you. Something's going to happen to me.
That's right. And you've been in and out of the closet, and you've had to kind of fight your way through executive leadership roles, and you've run marathons, and you just kind of take a licking, keep on ticking, as the old Timex watch commercial used to go. How do you do it? And I didn't really know exactly how I did it. And so that question of how have I gotten through life's hard things was the question I kind of started with. And as I started going into the spaces, it was really about that journey of what makes my ability to come out the other side of these really hard life obstacles and be strong and to be interesting and to still have been okay and made it. And the answer really became what is now your real life. And you're not wrong. The real model is, the word real is an acronym. It stands for the four key anchors that resilient people, and specifically what authentically resilient people know how to do. And I'm happy to talk about that at length. Um, I was just going to say to the last question, because this is the bridge. The whole person shows up at work, right? And the whole person shows up in life. So when life works, work works. And the idea is that when you bring your whole life, your real life, and you're going through the hard things, and you're learning from those hard things, and you're taking back control by being exactly who you are, by living your lived truth and understanding your purpose and your sense of values and your authentic self, you can be unstoppable. And that's what this book is about.
Brilliant. Let's listen to a quick advert.
The Maverick Paradox. Judith Germain is an author, speaker, consultant, mentor, and trainer, and the leading authority on maverick leadership. She is the founder of the Maverick Paradox, which supports organizations to enhance their leadership capabilities and to help business owners develop and grow their businesses. Judith enables individuals, business owners, and organizations to improve their impact and influence. She is also HR Zone's leadership columnist, and her expert opinion has appeared in national, international, and trade press.
Welcome back to the Maverick Paradox. This is the podcast for the pathologically curious. So, when I looked at your book and you talk, when we're looking at like the first one, R is about reality.
Yep.
Which I love because people always seem to not look at reality. So it's really frustrating. I noticed that you have the reality curve, which is similar to, the Kubler-Ross green. But I like what you've done with it, where you've kind of added the 3 planes of face it, take control of it, plan and activate it. And I like it because it gives an action, whereas the curve, Kubler-Ross, which is, as you know, comes from grief before it was adapted, is almost passive, isn't it? In the sense that we're all going to go through this, and that's just the way it is. We'll go at different speeds, but this is what it is. But you're like saying, no, I can almost, which is what I'm assuming, that I can jump some of that by actually actively doing things at key moments.
Yes.
Did I understand that right?
Crushed it. Ding, ding, ding. You're scoring the big points again here, Jude. I think, we say it all the time is, oh, you just got to face reality, man. Well, what does it mean? And for me, that first anchor of reality is the truth for how you really do want to look at adversity. And resilient people know how to move through that curve really quickly. And maybe what we do later is in the show notes, we can post a visual of this reality curve. But, when you step in the dog do, or you have an accident or something happens, the first thing is to acknowledge that something terrible has happened. And that part happens pretty naturally. We all know when something bad has happened to us. The challenge is getting from acknowledge to acceptance. And what happens is people slide down that slope of suffering. And inside that slope of suffering, where you're suddenly shocked that you have this terrible thing that happens and you don't know what to do with it. And then you're frustrated and you're angry and you're scared and you're fearful. And suddenly you get into what psychologists and the grandfather of positive psychology, Martin Seligman, says is learned helplessness. You learn how to be helpless and not be able to help yourself. And so resilient people move from acknowledge to accept really quickly. And equally powerful, as they face it and lean into it and they then take control of it, they're able to move up that curve by looking for what I call the advertunity. And the advertunity is that side of mindset that enables you to see where it's, a combination of the words adversity and opportunity, where they collide. You can see that there's an opportunity inside the bad thing that happened. And then you start to put an action plan on that. It tell you that, resilient people, particularly in resilient businesses, this is the businesses that were really great and survived during COVID, were those that were able to move through that reality curve very quickly. And they used the magic of, acknowledge to accept to advertunity to action to their advantage. And as a result, they survived. And those companies that didn't know how to cope, they kind of got stuck in the slope of suffering and couldn't pivot fast enough. Pivot was the word of 2020. As you remember, I like to say that pivot really is the real word of that is advertunity, because companies that survived found that advertunity and figured out how they could maneuver and take control back from the pandemic, and then continue to breathe life into their business differently. And that's the same thing that we do and that we need to do as humans as we face, hardship and obstacles in our lives. Just face reality. First thing is acknowledge, accept it, look for what you can do differently, and then put an action plan straight up to it. Because when you do, you're going to come out the other side, feeling great, and you'll have learned something. That's the definition of resilience. Really is 2 parts. It's about taking back control and the learning and growth that you get from that experience, so that the next time, you hit an adversity, you're more prepared. Your body does keep the score, as that book goes. And the science also enables your body to remember those things. That's why I'm going to say one more thing, is why I also makes me crazy sometimes when I hear people say, oh, just fake it till you make it.
Oh, that really annoys me as well.
You can't, okay? Because your body and your brain know the difference. and they've lived it. So you just can't. So what I always tell people is, instead of saying that, why don't you just get to know your body and your brain better by being more authentic and understand, the other components of what makes you you. And
Yeah.
when you do that, then you're going to really be able to soar with the eagles and really achieve, joy.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I find that very irritating. It's like, let's be as inauthentic as possible and then act surprised when they won't trust us anymore. I mean,
Yeah,
seriously, isn't it
right.
much better to there's a difference between hacking your brain so you can be more confident or more certain than it is to just know. Because I mean, how do you deal with the cognitive dissonance? This is why people get imposter syndrome, right? Because they know they know they're not doing it, and they know they're faking it, and then they wonder why they feel like they're imposters. It's like, well, anyway, you know what? What I
No,
like
it,
about
it
God,
it fits. That totally fits. And I talk about these things in the. So we should go through the rest of the word. So real is reality, energy. A is for authenticity, and L is for love. And when we get to the chapter on authenticity, we're absolutely talking about how you can't fake it till you make it, because your body keeps that score. And when I talk about your inner critic and imposter syndrome and self-doubt and self-sabotaging, all of that comes from this inner voice that's often wrong. And it's because the body is pre-wired for threats. And so it's this weird thing to try to keep ourselves safe, which is why people try to fake it so they can kind of show up looking like they're safe. But in many ways that doesn't serve us. And what I argue is, if you really want to have a real life, you release some of those things, so that you can really then live fully knowing what and who you are.
yeah, I'm liking it. I'm liking it, and I'm looking at your curve, and what I like about it in particular, one is it's very, very good, and two, it gives words to things that I intuitively knew but didn't have the word. So when I used to train around and discuss the Kubler-Ross curve, and I would say, maverick leaders go to acceptance really fast. It's not like they don't feel the things, but they're very pragmatic. It's like, right, okay, I know I'm going to feel crap, so I'll feel crap in a minute and let me move. Right, okay. And it's like, and I love the fact that your curve continues way past acceptance and actually has mindset next, whereas most people would have put mindset before acceptance. So I like that. I am looking forward to going back to that chapter and having another deep dive in that. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Right, we're not going to talk about love and authenticity because I think they're self-evident,
Yeah.
or at
Fair
least
enough.
they should be. So let's talk about the E then.
Yeah. Which is energy management.
Mm, mm.
I think this is one of the challenges that we have in society today and workplaces, life places, is that we are in the war for attention. And what people always say is, well, I don't have enough time. Well, congratulations. You will never have enough time. You know, time is finite. And I've said this a couple times now, so I apologize. It's a repeat for me, but for your audience, the great mystery of life is we don't know how much time we actually get. None of us do. But what you can do is manage energy. And when you manage energy and not time, you're actually going to be able to really then think about how you go through hard things. What kinds of experiences do you want to have? Because you're managing the way you operate and how you spend energy and how you charge it up. And so I think about energy in the ways of four key well-being batteries. And I proselytize this in the companies that I consult with and companies I used to work with is, let's talk about how you want to manage energy through these four well-being batteries. The first one is your physical battery. We all have physical energy, right? It's obvious. It's how we spend and move and walk and talk and spend energy to eat. We all have emotional energy. As human beings, we are unique in the way that we are wired with the brain chemistry, but also the hippocampus and the amygdala and the things that enable memory and our prefrontal cortex, which enable us to process things, but left brain, right brain, and how we, mix those things together and make meaning That is combination of emotional energy, but also mental energy. It's just the third
Mm.
battery. How we process and how we organize our thoughts, how we organize time, how we manage time is all mental energy. How we feel and emotional things is emotional energy. And that is wrapped up by the fourth battery of spiritual energy, which is really about purpose. So when we talk about, authenticity, I'm talking about being purpose driven and really understanding your values and understanding why you're here and why you can use and how you use your strengths and how then you make impact. That is spiritual energy. And those four can be charged up and they can be drained. I say to a lot of people, and I'm going to show, my cell phone here, right? If your cell phone battery goes down to the red zone, what do? Everyone panics, right? And they go and they plug in their phone so that they don't miss a beat and that battery supercharges. But when we start taking care of ourselves and we get down to the red zone, what do? We often allow ourselves to be fully drained. And those things in workplaces, those things in life, when you're not managing adversities, those are the things that lead to burnout. So the idea is as we start to manage energy and we look at the cross sections of how those four batteries can be charged or drained, a big part of the work that I do with clients and with companies is really about identifying energy positive activities where you are charging those batteries and energy negative activities that drain your batteries. And when you do an energy audit in this way, suddenly you realize you might be spending time on things that don't matter.
Mm.
And you can reinvest that time differently. Pardon me. I got see how easy it is to slip. You can reinvest that energy so you get more time back. So energy really is the core to how you manage the big, ugly things that happen to you. And also the small, little, ugly things that happen to you so that you can ultimately be in control of how you manage your life.
Thank you for that. So in your book, you have the energy, those four gates, pillars, batteries, you call them,
Yep.
as a triangle with spiritual at the top. Do you mean to represent it as like Maslow, where it's suggested that you have to finish one energy battery before you move another? Or do you recognize that you can you can have high spiritual energy, for example, and very low physical energy?
Yeah, I'm suggesting that it's not a coincidence that when you look at how how your energy is can be managed and how also adversity and energy stacks, it stacks in a similar way that when you are working in spiritual energy and you're spending energy to do spiritual or purpose-driven work, that is very similar to the stack of self-actualization. And in the same ways that physical energy is really about how you eat, how you sleep, and how you hydrate, those are very similar to the
Okay,
stack
that
that
makes
connect
sense.
to physical needs. So,
Right.
if we think about it in real simplistic terms, you can compound the way you look at energy in order to live a life of joy and well-being in a similar way that uh, Maslow is suggesting that you could um, order your life in terms of human needs and fulfillment.
So what you're doing is showing the comparisons. You're not suggesting that you have to follow them in a linear pathway. Okay, that's all right.
No, that's right.
Because otherwise, I'm about to say, well, now I don't agree, but I do agree
Well,
now.
yeah,
So that's
because there's a lot of arguments about Maslow
well,
today.
I know. So I was like trying not to say anything, but no,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Look, this has been a really good conversation, Nate, and I'd like you to come back to
Okay.
continue the conversation. I really feel like this is a part one conversation, and I'd love to have a part two if that's something you're up for.
Jude, I would love to continue the conversation. As I said, as an activist in this space, to not only stir up workplaces with well-being. My mission is really to help build authenticity and resilience in individuals, one person at a time. So, however I can do that work and continue to share the work that I do, both with my book, Your Real Life, which looks like this for everybody. It's also opportunity for us to continue to help bring lived experiences so that people can learn and grow and try some stuff out. Ultimately, when we as humans are feeling good, we leave a better world for the next generation. And that's a big part of what I want to accomplish. So I'm happy to come back.
Brilliant. That's fantastic.
That's up good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Nate. And thank you out there for tuning into the Maverick Paradox podcast. I am Judith Germain, your host, and I hope you've enjoyed today's conversation.
The Maverick Paradox Magazine. The Maverick Paradox Magazine is for the pathologically curious. Written by a swagger of socialized mavericks who are divergent thinkers, the magazine tackles the biggest issues affecting maverick leaders today. You might be a business owner or a leader within an organization who wants to have your thinking challenged, to be exposed to a diversity of thought, or to learn from diverse experts in their fields. If so, the Maverick Paradox Magazine is for you. Join the swagger at themaverickparadox.com and engage in the conversation.